Hi, in this video I'll help you get to know your car a little better. At the end of this video I've put together a straightforward infographic that summarizes all the key points. Like, subscribe and comment below. It really helps.
All right, so you're driving along, minding your own business, and bam, a new warning light pops up on the dash. I know, that feeling can really sink your stomach. But hey, don't panic. That light isn't just there to stress you out. Think of it as a clue, a little message from your Chevy. And today we're going to play detective and figure out exactly what it's trying to say. And that light has a name, doesn't it? It's the C1100 code. You've probably plugged in a scanner, saw that code, and thought, what on earth is that? So the big question is, what does it actually mean? And more importantly, what's the next step? Well, you're in exactly the right spot. We're going to break it all down. So here's our game plan. We're going to tackle this like a pro. First, we'll look at the warning light itself. Then we'll investigate our prime suspect, a faulty sensor. After that, it's onto the wires and connections, then the physical parts. And finally, we'll touch on the car's computer, the ECM. Let's get to it. All right, section 1. So, that C1100 warning light, this is our first clue. So what is this code actually telling us? Well, in plain English, C110000 means your car's computer sees a problem with the brake booster vacuum sensor. Now, that sensor is a really important little gadget in your power braking system. Its whole job is to measure vacuum pressure, which is what helps you press the brake pedal down so easily. So when this code pops up, it's the car saying, hey, something's not quite right with how this sensor's performing. Okay, so this table basically lays out our 4 main suspects in this little mystery. First up, we've got the sensor itself just sending the wrong voltage. Second, it could be an electrical short, a problem in the wiring. Third, we might have some old-fashioned physical damage to things like hoses or tubes. And our final and least likely suspect is a malfunction in the big brain itself, the engine control module, or ECM. We're going to go down the list, one by one. All right, let's dive into suspect number 1, a faulty sensor. This is by far the most common reason for this code to pop up. You know, you always want to start with the simplest, most likely cause, and 9 times out of 10, it's going to be this little guy. So you might be wondering, how does the car even know the sensor's acting up? It's all about voltage. See, this sensor is constantly sending a signal to the car's computer, and that signal is supposed to stay within a very specific range, between 0.13 and 3.30 volts. If that voltage drops too low or shoots up too high, even for a split second, the computer immediately flags it and throws up the error code. And get this, it's incredibly sensitive. We're talking about just 200 milliseconds. That's literally faster than the blink of an eye. If the voltage is out of whack for just that tiny fraction of a second, that's all it takes to trigger the code and light up your dash. Pretty crazy, right? Okay, so let's say you've checked the sensor, or maybe you've even replaced it, and the light is still on. What's next? Well, now we have to follow the electrical trail, because a perfectly good sensor is useless if its message can't get to the computer, right? So let's check those wires and connections. A really common problem here is something called a short to ground. Now, that sounds super technical, but the analogy of a leaky pipe is perfect. Imagine your car's wiring is like the plumbing in your house. A short to ground is basically a leak. The electricity is leaking out of the wire and going somewhere it shouldn't, usually by touching a metal part of the car, instead of completing its journey to the computer. And this is something you can actually take a peek at yourself. First, just do a visual inspection. Follow the wire from the sensor and look at the harness. See anything obvious, like are there any frayed spots or cracked insulation? Next, go ahead and unplug the connector. Look inside for any of that nasty green or white crusty stuff. That's corrosion, and it's a signal killer. And last but not least, just make sure everything is plugged in nice and snug. Sometimes it's really as simple as a loose connection. All right, so we've looked at the sensor and we've looked at the wires. If we still haven't found our culprit, it's time to get our hands dirty and check the physical parts. You know, sometimes the issue isn't electrical at all. It's just good old-fashioned wear and tear. So here's the deal. That brake booster needs a perfect vacuum to work, and the sensor's only job is to measure that vacuum. If there's a tiny crack in one of the hoses, you get a vacuum leak. That leak messes up the pressure, the sensor reports a wacky reading to the computer, and bam! There's our C1100 code again. So you'll want to carefully check all those rubber hoses. Look for cracks, feel if they're brittle, and just double-check that they're all seated properly on their connectors. Okay, so we are running out of suspects. We've checked the sensor, the wiring, and the hoses. If we've ruled all of that out, we have to turn our attention to the final possibility, the big one, the ECM. The ECM is basically the brain of the entire operation. It's this powerful little computer that's constantly getting information from all over the car, including, you guessed it, our brake booster sensor. And it uses that info to make sure everything is running just right. Now, let's be clear. Could the ECM itself be the problem? Yes, absolutely. But is it likely? Not really. It's way, way less common than a bad sensor or a simple wiring problem. That's why we always leave this for last. You definitely want to rule out all the easier and, frankly, cheaper fixes before you even start thinking about replacing the car's main computer. So, let's wrap this all up into a simple action plan. Here's your checklist. Number 1, your first move is to replace the brake booster sensor. That's your most likely fix. Number 2, if that doesn't solve it, you move on to the wiring. Repair or clean any damaged wires and connectors. Number 3, still no luck? Check and replace any cracked or damaged hoses. And finally, number 4, the last resort. Get that ECM tested and, if you have to, replace. And really, that's what this is all about. You're not just staring at a scary, mysterious dashboard light anymore. Now you have a logical roadmap. You know how to go from the most likely, simple fix all the way to the least common one. You understand the why behind the code. So the only question left is, armed with all this knowledge, what's your next move going to be?